Hey, welcome back. Okay, so obviously this is going to be where we start the playthrough. There's some rules we got to discuss real quick. First of all, if you're brand new to a coin game, there's this sequence of play, and I know we're looking at it upside down, and I apologize for that, but there's one for each faction. Here, these are all what's called eligible. And I'm going to grab a card that's not in the game. Let's look at this one. So for this particular card, green would go first, then the Revolutionaries, then Congress, and then Raj. Okay, so it's that order. And for any given card, only 2 of the 4 are going to get to go. So let's say green gets to go first. They can choose to pass, or they can choose this option, or this option, which we'll get into later. And let's say they chose this one. Well, then who's next? Well, black is next. And so black can only choose this option here. That's if they want to take an action, or they can choose to what's called pass. Let's say they pass. Then Congress gets to go. That's orange. They may also pass. So then red gets to go, and red may say, you know what, I'm going to go like that. Okay. So then this card is resolved. It goes away. The next card comes out. Now, we get to see both cards. So, for example, at the start of the game, this is going to be our current card right here, and we actually get to see the next one that's coming. So that's important, and that's crucial for deciding whether we're going to pass or go, okay? And I'll explain why in a second. So the reason red would have gone in that last case, maybe this is not a very desirable thing to do, although in this case it is. But let's just play along with me here. Red may choose to go because the next card has red going last again. So, and here's the point I'm trying to make. Only 2 players get to go. And when you pass, you do get a benefit for passing. But if you never had a chance to go, you don't even get to pass. You just sit there, okay? So what's going to happen? After we finish that first card, these 2 go into ineligible. And now only these 2 get to go next round. So this entire card belongs to them. So orange goes first, and then black, which ironically enough are the 2 that are sitting there. But let's say it was this situation. Orange and black are not eligible, so green and red would be guaranteed an opportunity to play on this card. So I went through this really fast. It's going to make sense when you start seeing me play. But 90% of the strategy of this game is in the manipulating. When do it's that song, I think it's from the 70s, Should I Stay or Should I Go Now, right? You're going to be wondering that the entire time. Maybe it's the 60s. I can't remember, but should I stay or should I go now? And that's going to be the decision that everybody's making. We're going to make it as a human, and then even the AI has to make that decision. And it's going to be based on these cards. Now, these are sometimes very powerful events down here. And the factors they're going to play into whether or not you stay or go is going to be really threefold. The first one is this event may be awesome and you have to take it. So you want to go, right? Or you're looking at the next card and the event on there is awesome. So you want to pass on this card so you can be eligible for the next one. That's another thing, right? Or the second reason is, like in the case of the Raj, they wanted to go on the first card because, look, they weren't going to get to go on the second card. They could have potentially gone 3 cards before they actually got to take a turn. That's awful, by the way, folks. So, so when you have this situation where you're dead last on both of the cards and you get an opportunity to go first on one of these, you take it. The third one is you're just out of money or resources. When you pass, that gives you resources. If you're the Raj, if you're one of the revolutionaries, you get resources. And if you're a non-violent faction, you get to move an activist from out of play into available. So that's the first concept, right? Are these cards and how that plays out. And the second concept to understand is there's the state of India here. And what you're going to see is there's unity and that's the unity between the Muslim faction and Congress. And then there's restraint. Restraint, of course, is from the British Raj perspective. How willing are they to go and resort to violence? So these will move up and down. And if both of them are ever a 1, then a crisis is triggered. And all kinds of stuff happens when a crisis happens. And to be quite honest, I don't remember it at this point. We're going to have to look it up when we get there. The other thing to understand is that the protests can only be removed from here equal to the restraint. So since the restraint is sitting at 4, the Congress cannot have 2 more protests. They can only have 2 protests on the board right now. If restraint were ever to be reduced to 3, then 2 more protests are now eligible to go onto the board. And one of them is already on the board when we did setup, and it's over here at the Bombay Presidency, and that's where the protest marker is right now. Okay. Third thing to understand is, how do we win? Well, there's many ways to look at it, but you could just look at the marker here. Support plus Raj control is for the Raj, which is what we're going to play. And so the way you calculate that is you look at the population here, which is a 2. That's what this is right here, that 2. And you can see here that Raj controls it, so that's 2 points for the Raj. Okay, but this is passively opposing the Raj, so Raj doesn't get any points for that. But then we move along to Bihar. You can see a population of 2, and they passively support the Raj. So you get 2 points for the Raj. So that's now 4 points, right? Then we look here at Calcutta with a population of 1, and you can see that they're in control and passive support. So that's 2 more points, 1 plus 1, okay? So that's 2 more points for the Raj. So that's 2 for 6 points out of the 24 that they start the game with. And if you sit down and do the math and look at every population and multiply it by all the control markers and support markers, you'll get to 24. It's pretty straightforward. Now, how does that control change? Well, for example, they have control over East Bengal because they have 3 pieces here, and that is more than the active pieces from anybody else. Now, this counts as 1, but these are not active, so they don't count. Okay? So as long as 3 is more than 1, they're in control. And here you can see they have 4 to 0. Okay, this is considered 0. Another thing to point out is that passive support could become active support. So then you can see it's a ×2. And that multiplier is, of course, against the population. The control doesn't get multiplied anymore. It's just 1 times the population. Okay? So for the British, they need to get to 39. Now, if they get to 39 while we're playing the game, do they automatically win? No. They only win during the campaign phase, which is one of these. And these are the cards that during setup we have buried in this deck. So there are 4 campaigns cards in there, 4 stacks of 12, basically, with a campaign card. So 4 stacks of 13 with a campaign card mixed amongst those final 6 or 7 of the 13. So every time one of those happens, we're going to trigger what's called an end of campaign, and then we're going to go through, and one of the first checks you see here is a victory check, and then, resources, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So as with any coin game, my number 1 recommendation to anybody is you must study what happens during the intermission. Every coin game has some sort of intermission. For example, the American Revolution one has winter, right? So every winter is the intermission. For Pendragon, it was called an epoch. And at the end of every epoch, things would happen. That same is true here. And we're going to go over those in just a second. But if you don't understand what happens during the intermission, an intermission is what I'm calling it, but this game calls it a campaign, right? If you don't understand what happens at the end of the campaign, it's really going to muck you up with how you play. Because this is like, these intermissions are like God mode. The board just drastically changes, and it's also where you check for your victory conditions. And so you want to make sure you're manipulating the game so that way when the campaign does come, you're ready for it. And you do sort of have to count cards a little bit in this game. You know that the top 13 cards has an end of campaign card, and it's going to be in the final 7 of those 13 cards, right? So for the first 6 cards, you know you're safe. So play the game the way you want to play it. But then after that 6th card, you know this campaign can end any time now. So now, you know, time is of the essence. You got to get your stuff done, okay? But that actually isn't what I was trying to explain right away. What I wanted to explain right away was just how all the different end conditions are, and then we'll get into the campaign. But I'm going to grab the next one here. So let's move the camera in here. You can see these are all 3 of the end game conditions. Here is the Muslim, and you can see it's a 2. The revolutionaries are a 3, and then Congress is a 4. Congress says total oppose, okay? This one is unrest population plus bases. And this one is Muslim oppose plus 2 times Muslim state population. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, let's look at the Gandhi one first, Congress. 4, total oppose. If you look on the board, there's an oppose here, 1 times 2, that's 2 points. There's 1 times 1 for 3, 1 times 1 for 4. There's 4 oppose, that's where Gandhi's got his points from, okay? Now the revolutionaries is unrest population plus bases. Well, there's only 1 unrest token on the board, that's here. And that population is a 2, and they have 1 base, which happens to be in the exact same place. That's only coincidental from a scoring perspective. So that's 3 points, hence the reason the revolutionaries have 3 points. Then the Muslims have total oppose in a Muslim location plus Muslim state, or 2 times the Muslim state. Well, there are no Muslim states on the board. That would be these, okay? This is a oppose in a Muslim state, which is green, and so that's why they have 2 points. Now, if this became a Muslim state instead of a Raj control, then what you're going to get is you're going to get 2 points because of the oppose, and you're going to get 4 more points because of that. And then, of course, the Raj would lose 2 points because they're no longer in control. All kinds of craziness there. But that's the situation with how control and things like that go. Now, one thing I want to do, I want to look up again what causes a cylinder to become active. This one I understand. It's protests cause these to become active. Also, if these are ever on a railroad, they're automatically active, okay? They actually can go on railroads. Railroads are considered a space separate from these. So very important that you understand that. And then these towns are its own, it's not really a space. You don't do anything with towns, but railroads are extremely important. So basically you're looking at 3 spaces here, 1, 2, 3, okay? And if one of these ends up on a railroad, they do become automatically active. They're never inactive on a railroad. These are active, like I said, only in a protest space, which is what you see there with Gandhi, okay? All right, so yes, I need to look up when does he become inactive and when does he become active. So I got to get those figured out. But then let's look at the campaign thing. Now the campaign thing, we actually have a campaign card, and it tells you what happens. So you do a victory check, then you do resources. So here, strike markers go on railroads that have protests on them. This is a critical thing. Gandhi wants to put protests on railroads, and then they become strike markers when we get to the resource phase. With more activists than cubes. Cubes, mind you, are belonging to us, the Raj. Whether they're white cubes or red cubes, they're still ours. So we want more cubes than protest. Got it? Or that are adjacent to cities with no Raj control. So this would be railways either with protest, with more activists than cubes, or that are adjacent to cities with no Raj control. there's 3 conditions that causes strike markers to go on railroads. So we need to be mindful of all of those because railroads are important to us. So then the Raj adds the value of the railways with no strikes to our resources. So we actually get, and it's telling you right here, it's 40 bucks, 40 resources worth of stuff. And then we subtract all the strikes. So in a perfect situation, we're going to get plus 40. Then subtract 2 for every nonviolent piece that's in jail. Now, jail is a concept of it's a box over here, and you can put the nonviolent protesters in jail to remove them from a space or from a railroad, for example. But you do have to pay resources to keep them in jail. Okay. Then the revolutionaries add twice the number of revolutionary bases on the map to revolutionary resources. So what's interesting about this one is the revolutionaries don't have resources. So what you do is you flip this over, and from an NPC perspective, they have their own thing. And you can see here that they skip this phase, the resource phase. So the revolutionaries don't do anything. But if you were playing the revolutionaries as a player, you would actually get to place a base on the map to revolutionary resources, twice the number. Okay, so then you get imperialism, and in up to 4 cities with Raj control, troops and sepoys, every 3 Raj resources spent removes an unrest marker or shifts 1 level towards active support. We just get to finally do that, and if in jail, release Gandhi to any space with no Raj control. And then here, for each space selected, release 2 activists. So we can implement imperialism. So having people in jail actually helps us. And then we can actually do things. Here, an imperialism step, for every 2 activists we release from jail. And then here you can see that the Muslim League may shift a total number of cities and provinces up to unity with their own pieces and no Raj control. Pakistan movement. You can place a base in any one non-railway space. Secret societies, revolutionaries, place a base, blah, blah, blah. And then game end. If it's the final round, determine victory. So, forgot to mention that. You check for victory up here when you draw this campaign card. That's the first thing we do. But if we get through the entire stack of cards, that means we're at the true game end, right? We're at the final campaign card. It won't be the entire stack. It'll be whatever that last campaign card is, right? Then we're actually going to do all these steps up here and then do a final victory condition check. But that's only if it's the final round, okay? Otherwise, do redeploy and reset, which is this. So you're going to have to redeploy your troops. They're going to have to move. So the current British Viceroy gets changed with the new campaign card that we drew. The Raj may move troops and sepoys to railroads anywhere with Raj control or cities, and may move sepoys to any states. Remember, you can't put Raj troops in any state. Then you have to pay 2 resources for each troop remaining in a province or on a railway. Finally, remove all cubes from the provinces without Raj control, and all but 1 troop from each city to available. So this is crazy. You got to understand here, you can move a whole bunch of stuff to your city and it's free. Because if you don't put it in the city, you have to pay 2 resources for each troop remaining in a province or on a railway. So you're going to have to pay 2 for every troop you leave out that's not in a city. But then you have to go into your city and all but 1 troop from each city to available. And that's every city, whether you have control or not. It says remove all cubes from provinces without Raj control, but if you're in a city, you remove all troops but 1. So this is very important to understand, okay? Congress must move activists on railways and may move other Congress, blah, blah, blah. And then Muslim League doesn't move, and revolutionaries have to move, and then we reset things. And here, this actually might answer my other question. Remove all protest and strike markers from the map and flip all activists inactive. Remove one rest marker from each space without guerrillas. Flip all guerrillas underground, reset restraint, etc. Okay, so it seems like an awful lot. It is, actually, to be quite honest, but it's important. And the thing that you need to understand is that railroads are king, right? If you're the Raj player, railroads are how you're going to get your money. And then if you want to keep your troops on the board to keep control, you're going to have to pay for your troops, or you're going to have to go back into the available box, which is over there. And then you're going to have to spend actions to redeploy them. Now, there's one further thing I want to state. Unlike Pendragon, in Pendragon, as a single player, you could control more than one faction if you wanted. And then it had this rule of, okay, once you get to fragmentation, you have to control only one. In this case, it doesn't recommend that you do that. It does say, though, that if you wanted to do like control 2, then your final score is going to be just the better of the worst of the two that you're controlling. So even if one of them is winning the game, that's not your final score. It's the other one, right? But in a true solitaire game, which is what we're playing, there is no victory we can get early. So I don't know if I can do a full playthrough of this. This is going to be many, many hours, but we would have to go through this entire deck before we can trigger endgame for us to win. Now, the AI can win at any point that they exceed, the thresholds for winning. So for example, the British Raj wins if you get over this number, over 38. If you get to 39, British Raj wins. But in my case, as a solitaire, this is the one thing about Gandhi that's very, very different from the other games, is that I can't win the game early. It explicitly says that in the rules. It's a little frustrating. I really wish that the game would let me play it like it was any other multiplayer game. Because if I was playing a multiplayer game against other humans and I somehow found a way to get here, I win. So I don't understand that part. And I think we're going to have to explore that together. And, either the AI is just so crude and simple that we have to play it the way that they're telling us, because I actually prefer a game where if I can figure out how to get here, I win early. That, to me, is the proper way to play any coin game. And the fact that that's not allowed when you're playing against all NPCs, it does bother me. And it's a big notch against this game right now. And like I said, I haven't played it yet against the AI, but I'm already disappointed from that perspective. Now, the AI cards still look very cool, but if the AI is going to be that weak that we have to make it all the way to the end and then win, I'm not as big of a fan. I mean, that's a really long game. But we'll see. We'll just play it out, and I know I've repeated myself a couple times here, but we'll just play it out and we'll go from there. So I know I promised play in video 2, and we're 23 minutes in, and I have yet to do a play, but I'm actually going to end this video because I do want to look up what makes these active before we start, because I don't want to go astray. And also, I'm really nervous about controlling the AI, but let me have a few moments to collect my thoughts, and I will be back, and we will truly be playing when I come back. Thank you.